Histograms. The scores of 54 members of a sociology lecture class on a 70-point exam are listed to the right. Use 5 classes with a uniform class width of 5 points and use a lower limit of 45 points for the first class to construct a histogram. Before we create a histogram, we need to first construct a frequency table. So I have 2 columns to my frequency table. My first column is going to represent the class limits. And that's because I'm told that I have 5 classes, which means I'm going to have 5 groups of data, and that each class width is 5 points. So that means the number of values from one point to another within my group is 5. So my first column is the class limits. And then my second column will be the frequency. And that will just be the number of times that a value appears within that limit in my data set. So to construct your class limits, we'll go back to the problem. And it tells me that the lower limit is 45 points. So that means that my starting limit is 45. So I'll just write a 45. Now, the problem tells me that my width is 5 points. So that means that I'm only going to have 5 numbers from 45 to the other limit. So if I just write 45, 46, 47, 48, and 49, we can see that I have 5 values. So my limit is going to range from 45 to 49. And again, that's because it's encompassing only 5 numbers at a time. So my first class limit is going to be 45 to 49. And this is just a grouping. Next, I have a second class, which is going to be 50, because you always go consecutively. So we dropped off at 49, so we're going to start back up again with our new group at 50. And then 50 is going to go to 54, because again, we just want to include 5 numbers, including 50. Then I'll have 55 through 59, and then 60 through 64, and lastly, we'll have 65 through 69. And I know to stop here because my problem tells me that I'm only going to use 5 classes. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now that I've listed all of my classes, I'm going to go up to my data set of all 54 values, and I'm going to identify the number of values that occur in each class. First, I'll identify the number of values that are between 45 and 49 to include 45 and 49. So we'll go up to the data set and we're just going to highlight the values that are 45, 46, 47, 48, or 49. And I have 3 values that are within that class, so my frequency is 3. Now I'm going to do the same thing with 50 through 54. We'll just highlight the numbers that are 50, 51, 52, 53, or 54. And as we can see, we have 13 values that fit within that group. So our frequency is 13. Now I'm going to identify the values that fall within the 55 through 59 class. And I have 15 values that are 55, 56, 57, 58, or 59. So my frequency for that class is 15. Next, we'll look at the class 60 through 64. There are 17 values that are within the 60 through 64 class, so our frequency is 17. Lastly, we'll look at the class 65 through 69. And there are 6 values that are within that class. So the frequency for the last class is 6. Now that we have our class limits and our frequency, we can take this information and plot it in a histogram. Here we have our frequency table that we just created, and then beneath it we have the beginning of our histogram. And as you can see, the horizontal axis represents the values within the data set, and then the vertical axis represents the frequency, or the number of times that those values occurred in the data set. A histogram is a bar graph where the rectangles are placed next to each other. So we're going to plot this looking at each of the class limits and then drawing a bar from the lower limit of one class to the lower limit of another class. So first we're going to plot the class 45 through 49, and the frequency was 3. So I'm going to create my bar starting at 45, and I'll go up to 3. And that's in between these two boxes because this short line here represents 2. And then we'll just draw our bar in the middle of 2 and 4 to represent the 3. And then we're just going to end our bar at the lower limit of the next class, which is 50. And we'll go ahead and shade that in. So that is our first bar representing the frequency of 3 for the class 45 through 49. Now I'm going to draw the second bar for my second class. And again, I'm going to have this bar from 50 through 55, and my frequency is 13. So I'll start at 50, and I'm going to go up to 13, which is right here, and then I'll drop down at the 55 mark. And that's because a histogram, we have the bars right next to each other. And we'll go ahead and shade this bar in. So this is the bar that represents our frequency of our second class. Next, we'll do the same thing with our third class. So from 55, I'm going to go to frequency of 15. So I'll start at 55, and I'm going to go up to 15, and then I'll go down at 60, and I'll shade this in. Now we have our fourth class from 60 to 64, and the frequency is 17. So I'll start at 60 and I'll go up to 17, which is here, and then we'll drop down at 65, and we'll just shade that in. And then my last class is 65 to 69. So I'll start at 65, and I'm going to go to 6 on my vertical axis. So that would be right here, and then I'm going to drop down and I'll shade that in. Alright, so this is my answer for the histogram. This histogram represents all 54 members in my data set.